Hello, this is the 9.16 tutorial. We're starting with auxiliary views. Let's go ahead and start a new drawing. Make sure to load your McFatter templates. ACAD. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the grid so it's easy to see. This next step you do not do. This is just for instructional use only. So I can have the instructions here on the screen. Your instructions can either be on a Adobe PDF or through Canvas or through Handout. All right, so they give us an isometric view of the drawing, which we then have to lay out to a front, right, auxiliary view, and a top view. This drawing being very tricky, it's best to start on the right side view of this drawing. So the way I'm going to start this with is in the Home tab. Go ahead and draw a line. Let's start it approximately somewhere along here and draw the line out. The length of this line is going to be 4. And then the back side here is going to go up by 1. So move my mouse up. 1. Now at this point, I don't know how long this side is, but I do know that it's parallel to this face and to this face. The faces that are parallel are on an angle of 48 degrees. So what I'm going to do, because I have my dynamic input on, which is giving me these numbers, if you do not see dynamic input down here, you can load it through here and just make sure that it has a check mark on it. Now with this active, I can just go ahead and stretch the line out. Doesn't matter the distance, make it nice and large. And then when I hit the tab key, you notice the number switches over to the angle. And with that, I can type in 48 degrees, 48, enter, right click, enter. So now I see that I have a line going here at 48 degrees. I could check that by drawing a line from here straight across. And I can put a dimension, angular dimension, from here to here. And then I have my 48 degrees. Go ahead and get rid of that. Now, let me go ahead and put those 3 planes, 3 surfaces in. I already have this backside done. So now I'm going to go ahead and set up parallel lines. The total distance from the bottom or back to the top front is going to be 3. So I'm going to go ahead and use the offset command. It's important you use offset and not copy because we're making it parallel. Once the offset is in, my distance is going to be 3. Selecting my line here and pulling it out this way. So now I have the line here. Now I have to bring this line to the front edge here. Hit escape. Sending a line command from the front going straight up. Now, the problem with this, and what's making this really tricky about this problem, is that they do not give you a dimension for that front surface. Okay? They give you the back, but that doesn't mean that the back and the front are the same. So, with that information, I'm going across the 4, up the 1, then on the angle, parallel to the front, and from that front, I'm just going to go ahead and extend the line that intersects the line going up and down. Okay, so now that I drew that line going up, now I'm going to use the extend command, selecting my boundary edge, right click, and then select extend on that surface. And you can see where it intersects. If I draw a line coming across from here, going across, we'll notice it doesn't hit. It's not a given number. This would be a cut done in a machine shop or something along that line. So this is not measured for this drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and select that and delete. That extra line that I used for measuring. If you didn't draw it, it's fine. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the trim command. Selecting this face right here to get rid of the extra of the line going up. And now I need to go from this corner up 4.5. And it has to be on that angle. It's on an oblique surface. So this angle here, we're going to go ahead and use the circle command from this corner here. And we're going to type in that distance of 4.5. And where that intersects right here, this is where we're going to go ahead and draw our line that comes back. And we're going to go to a perpendicular snap. This is going to be converted into a center line. Because that's the center of the hole. From the very front edge, back along there, 4.5, and there's where the circles are. So this is a center line going through the part. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Another thing I need is this line that goes back this way. So I need to go back at 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line from this edge going back at 2. And then I'm going to select this surface and use the copy command. Now I'm going to go from that front endpoint to that endpoint there. And this makes the third surface. That's right here. Now, this line is going to stop where it intersects with the circle at the quadrants. Okay? So this is where we have our run out for the line. So I'm going to go ahead and use the trim command, selecting the center line to trim out this line here. So this is the point where this stops, right here. Now from here, let's go ahead and do our diameters, the 3 diameter and the 2.25 diameter. So I can go ahead and do a circle with a diameter, starting at my center line. I'm going to go 3. Then I'm going to do another circle right here at 2.25. Now where these circles intersect along this line, this is where I'm going to drop back from here to the bottom. I need to make sure I hit the perpendicular. At each of these intersections, you're going to drop back. Now this one right here, if you look closely at the drawing, you're going to notice where this line is dropping back here. It actually does not line up with the edge of the circle. And I will explain that once we get to the auxiliary view. But for now, we're going to avoid this line right here and not drop this back. Okay? We will see why in a little bit. We can go ahead and, for example's sake, I'll go ahead and put an anno line here. You do not have to draw this line. It goes right here perpendicular. Okay, this line is an outlier. We don't need this line here right now. But I'm going to demonstrate something later on when we get to our auxiliary view. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and delete the circles. And I'm going to go ahead and use the trim command. Selecting this line right here to cut this and this. This line right here and this line right here are going to be hidden lines. They are the hole going through the piece. Okay, and with this we have all the information we can get from the side view. Now we need to produce the auxiliary view. If you remember in the lesson, the auxiliary view can go anywhere above parallel to that surface. So what I recommend doing is using the offset command. The distance from here outward does not matter. I'm going to go ahead and do a distance of 5. Selecting the surface, pulling away at the surface, and placing it out here. Now from there, this is going to be my right-hand side of the auxiliary view. The piece itself is 3 thick. So I'm going to go ahead and offset this line right here at 3. Then I'm going to go ahead and draw a line from the endpoint to the endpoint. Excuse me, let me go ahead and select this line and change it to layer 0. I'm going to make sure that my current working layer is layer 0, just for sketching purposes. Let me go ahead and draw a line from here to here. Now, what I can do here is I can use the extend command from this edge here to extend my center line. And then I'm going to draw another line from the midpoint up to the midpoint. And that line right there, I'm going to change the center line. So this is the starting of the auxiliary view. So remember what you got in the lecture, the auxiliary view is a face on an angle presented as flat. Okay? It's the smooth surface allowing you to dimension properly on this face. I'm going to go ahead and draw those circles that I had before. One at 3. And the other one was 2.25. So now what I can do with this information is I can project my line with perpendicular on. And you can see where it snaps, perpendicular. You notice that it covers that line. All right, I'm going to delete that. I can also go ahead and use the extend command, selecting this line here, and project my hidden lines and that little outlier out. And you can see the lines come across and hit on the points, the quadrants of the circle. This means that everything I've done so far is accurate. Now, on this surface, we need to show the rib, this little brace right here. The thickness of it is 1, but since we have a center line, we're going to go ahead and go half of 1 at 0.5 on one side and 0.5 on the other. So I'm going to take this line, offset, 0.5, enter. Take this line over, take this line over, and that gives us a grand total using a line dimension from here to here of 1. All right, delete that. I'm going to select this line and this line and change it to layer 0. Now, I'm going to use the circle that's right here to trim this line and this line here. Now, if you look very carefully, you'll see that it added these little lines here because they were going past the circle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just enter and end the trim command, select this guy and this guy here, and then hit delete. Now they are no longer in the way of the drawing. And what happens here is when this rib is added to the material, that circle cannot exist because this is all one piece. So what's going to happen is I'm going to use the trim command, selecting these 2 lines and cutting away at that circle. Now you see the quadrant disappears, no longer exists anymore. So what I have to do here is at this endpoint is project this down to the surface at a perpendicular. And this is the actual line that exists in the drawing. You see how it arcs this way and then hits this surface? It falls just short of being a perfect circle coming down to here because this material is in the way. All right? So this is very important to have this line here and not this line here. This line is incorrect. Do not use the quadrant. All right, just going to delete that guy. Now I can use my trim command. to remove all these extra lines that I've projected, except for the center line. I'm going to keep that. This shows the relationship between the two views. I'm going to erase this, erase that, and the top. I'm going to trim out these extra sides. And this is the auxiliary view complete. It's not a full auxiliary view, it's just a partial auxiliary view. Information that is down on the surface is not necessary for the drawing. Now I'm going to move this you do not have, just to get it out of the way. Now I'm going to start working on my front view. So I'm going to project my lines across. Center line. And my top. And then I'm going to draw my edge. I'm going to take this line, I'm going to offset it 3. So offset 3. I'm going to convert this line to a center line so I don't forget that's what it is. Now I can start trimming some of this information out. I don't need any of this stuff past here. And I will not need to go any higher or lower than those two lines. Since I have the top already established, I'm going to trim out the top. And I'll leave this information here as reference just for now. So now that I've done that, from the midpoint, I'm going to draw a line coming straight down. This line is going to be the center. So I'm going to change that to a center line. And now right here, I have an intersection point. Okay. So I'm looking at this front view on the auxiliary face, and I'm going to need to draw that circle. Now I know from this end to this end here is going to be my circle's diameter. But from that center point going to the top, what's going to happen is the view is going to become squished. It's no longer a perfect circle. For example, if I have the circle drawn here, let's go ahead and change that to radius. This is just an example. You do not have to do it. The top of the circle is not there. What's happened is that circle has rotated down to this point down here. So the circle looks on this view as a foreshortened view. So in order to represent that here on this face, I'm going to use a command called ellipse. The ellipse tool is right here. And we need to use the axis end command. With that, I'm going to use the intersection point of the center line here, and then the other intersection here, or perpendicular. And then the last click is going to be the very top of where the circle is represented at that endpoint, in the midpoint. And this is what the circle looks like in the front view. Notice that it's not a perfect circle. That's because this view is foreshortened. If you take like a coin and you rotate it in your hand, holding the left and right side of it and spinning it around, you'll notice you can see that face just gets shorter until it becomes down to nothing. And then it spins back around, it becomes a circle again. So that is the ellipse that we need to represent for the very top surface here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to project my hidden line coming across this way. I'm going to project my other hidden line here coming across. And then I need a distance here. I'm going to use a circle just to show the example again. Diameter 2.25. Interesting how this looks like it almost matches up, but pay no mind to that. The height of this is deceiving, but the left to right is accurate. For example, if I draw the circle with a 3 diameter, you could see that this side here and this side here matches. I'm going to go ahead and delete this so it's not in my way. So I can now use this edge and this edge as my intersection points. I'm going to go ahead and use axis N from this quadrant to this quadrant. And the very top is going to be that line that I projected across. Make this less confusing, and delete the circle. And you can see the line that's being projected across here, and line being projected across here, creates that ellipse. Go ahead and delete this. And you can see that surface coming to life right here. All right. So the next thing I want to do is put in the rib. I'm going to go ahead and use the offset command. The rib is 1 thickness, so I'm going to do 0.5 because it's a mil. I'm going to select this line and push it off that way. I'm going to select this line and push it off that way. Right-click, enter. I'm going to change these and this line to a layer 0. And then for temporary, I'm going to draw a line from here straight across to here. This is going to create a nice cutting edge to trim with, to cut off this line and that line. The reason why I'm doing it this way is because if I use the circle, I'll have that little extra bit, and I don't want that. Now that I've cut that away, I'm going to go ahead and trim again, using that line to cut away at the circle. This is the piece that's eaten away by the material. And then I could take that line and get rid of it. So now you're seeing that key-like shape right here coming together in the drawing. I'm going to use the trim command, selecting this edge right here to cut away at this and this here. And notice that all my information has only been coming from this surface here. because that's the front surface. All right. I can now use the trim command to use this line to cut away at that side and that side there. And I can remove the top. So now you can see this is the front view that is accurate. And then this is the foreshortened view of this face here. All right, now we're going to work on the next level that comes back to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to project a line from this endpoint and project it straight across. And I'm going to project a point from here straight across. Now this back surface is only going to go up to here, to the quadrants. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that line back in, coming to the front surface of the quadrant here. And from here, this is that surface edge here, and what you can see from the circle vanishing from the front surface. All right. I'm going to change this line here so we don't get confused. This is a center line. Now I projected this line across just to show as an example. Since all these circles from here to here to here are parallel, I'm going to go ahead and select this circle here and use the copy command from the midpoint or the center down to here. Now this hole that's here is going to go from here all the way through the piece. We haven't gotten to that center line yet, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this. And what I'm left with is this arc going here. There's an arc going from this center line down to here as the surface of this object. So the top part of the circle, I'm going to trim out. So I use the trim command, selecting this line to cut away at the circle. And now you can see that surface right here that makes up this line right here. And this is jotting out right here, just like this guy is right here. And we can see how they perfectly intersect right here. When I copied from this center point down to this center point, that means that everything I've done so far is correct. If this is not correct in your drawing, you may have done something incorrectly. It might be a good time to start over again before you get too involved with the rest of the drawing. This right here is the make or break. All right, with that said, I'm going to progress with the rest of the drawing. I'm going to delete this line. I no longer need it. Now I'm going to draw another line from the back of the center, coming across. I change that line to a center line so I remember what that is. Now it looks like it hits this, but does not. Just happens to line up with it a little bit. You can see where it's not intersecting anything. And then this time I'm going to take those two circles. I'm going to copy them from the center point here and bring them down to our third depth. Making sure I hit the perpendicular or intersection. And where that intersects this time, I do not have to worry about the bottom of the circle because there is no circle down here besides the cutout, which is here. This is a cutout going from the very front of the piece and exiting at the back end. So I'm not going to trim this circle. But the circle that goes from here to there, which is represented on this auxiliary face, when this part of the circle from here to the center line goes back to here, it stops. But the surface of this going around here continues back uninterrupted all the way to the back of the piece. Okay? So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to use the trim command, selecting escape, trim command, selecting this line, right click, and I'm going to cut away the bottom, this and that, leaving me with an arc going from here up, and I'm going to leave this arc here. This is behind the piece. So these two lines, or two arcs, need to be changed to a hidden line. And then I'm going to draw a line coming from the quadrant here, straight down to the quadrant there. And another one coming from here, straight down to there. And change those to hidden lines as well, because I can't see them. But now you can see that tube coming to life. This hole is being drilled from this front edge all the way through the piece and stopping at that back point right there. I can't measure this information. This information had to be projected from this view. That's the reason why I started with this view. Okay? So now at this point, I no longer need these center lines. I'll keep one of them to maybe use as a reference. Let's go ahead and delete the other two. Then I'm going to trim out using this line here as a cutting plane to cut away at those two lines. There's one more line that's missing because from here to there and from here to there is a different height. I'm going to project from this endpoint coming straight across. And this is on the back side. So this is going to become a hidden line. I'm going to use the trim command to remove the extra information, leaving the hidden line, which measures at 1 right here, and this measurement from here to there is undetermined. It is the results of some angular work. So now our front view for now is complete. We're going to go ahead and have to do our top view now. This can become a little tricky. What we're going to do is project some lines coming from here, straight up, and from here, straight up this way. We're going to highlight this object here and highlight this center line here. I'm going to use the copy command to bring it up. And then I'm going to select that object. Notice I'm using the green this time. And rotate it. From here, 90 degrees. Notice this is 0, up 90. So it's going in this direction. Now I can project information from here to my top view. Just like how I did my front view, I'm going to use the extents, the very bottom of this, the very top of this. And then I'm going to use this edge right here, coming across. Let me project my center line. And then I need to find the center of the circle. So I'm going to project the center line from here on this first surface. I'm going to go ahead and repeat a line and project my hidden line, just for example. So this is that foreshortened view of this circle, visible on the top. And then I'm going to project my line coming across here. And here. You'll notice that I'm not measuring any of this information because this drawing here should be accurate and this drawing here should be accurate. So the information combined from those two views will make my top view accurately by just projecting the lines. So now I'm going to use the ellipse command again. Axis end. And I'm going to connect from this quadrant to this quadrant, and then finally snap to this quadrant right here. Then I'm going to repeat the ellipse command and go from this quadrant to this quadrant, and then that quadrant. Notice the three quadrants that I'm using is the same as I use here, using the left, right, and top. Now I need that rib. So I'm going to project that across. Be careful where you snap. I'm just going to go ahead and go a little bit past. Make sure you zoom in and zoom out when you're doing this. Check that rib here. And select somewhere around here where that ellipse stops is going to be here at this intersection to this intersection. I'm going to use the trim command, selecting this line here to cut away at the ellipse. And I'm going to also cut off those runouts. I'm going to remove that line. I no longer need these lines here because that front plane is now complete. I'm going to use the extend command. If you drew these lines longer, you don't have to worry about this. But I want to make sure it hits the back end, and this one also hits the back end. So I can use this for reference when I start doing the depth of this. As a matter of fact, as of right now, if you working on this would like to delete this line and this line, you can, or you can just leave it for now. We could go ahead and use it as a reference to trim and make our hidden lines. Up to you. I'm going to go ahead and start a line command coming from this endpoint. Now, be very careful here. Do not hit the center snap. I believe it's a little bit off. Make sure you're hitting the intersection or the endpoint of this line when you're doing it. This is a center line. Okay, midpoint is projected across here. That's fine. All right. So now we have this. We're going to project only the outside circle. We do not need the inside circle yet. That's going to be for the bottom, where this comes from here all the way back. Let's copy that from the midpoint to this new midpoint right here, perpendicular. And this is the arc that's located right here. So that since there's nothing above, we're going to trim that away. Selecting the center line as our cutting plane and cutting away the circle. This line here, this arc here, these are arcs. We're going to convert them to hidden lines because we can't see them. And then we're going to use the extend command. Selecting this guy and this guy here as a boundary edge. You know what, instead of doing that, let's hit escape. Let's just draw the line in. Because the line from here to here and the line from here to here are actually going to be hidden lines. We cannot see these lines from the top view. Okay? So this is kind of under that piece. So now we're going to do the last bit, this very bottom piece right here. So I'm going to project the line coming from here straight across. This is also a center line. I'm going to select both of the arcs, the ellipses, and copy from this midpoint to this perpendicular. And I'm going to use the trim command, selecting this line to remove this and this. This is that bottom piece that we have reflected over here already. And this circle right here is going to be converted to a hidden line. And these lines that are coming back this way, we can now use a trim command from this circle ellipse to this ellipse, cutting away the top and the bottom of those two, selecting this line and this line here, and changing it to a hidden line. I'm also going to need to project some more information from here, going straight across. This is the surface right here that's reflected here. It also helps us distinguish the surface that's coming up at that angle, coming across underneath this piece. I'm going to use this line and this line as a cutting plane to cut away at this and this. I'm going to use the trim command, selecting this line and this line to cut away at this line right here. And my last line I need to project. It's going to be this back corner right here, coming across. This is going to be a hidden line, so it's under the piece. Hidden. And I'll select this line and this line here as cutting planes for my trim to cut away at that hidden line. And trim this out here. Delete this. No longer requiring any center lines. Then I'm going to trim out here. And you can see the piece. This surface is a surface here. This surface is the surface here. You can see it here. And this is our drawing, pretty much complete. Select this and delete it. I can delete the relationship here. Now, I've made the constant mistake that I've made through multiples of these tutorials, is that I should have saved my drawing. Always good to make sure you save your drawing before you get too far into it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the save command. It automatically makes it save as. Make sure you save it in your folder. This is the Chapter 9 tutorial. So make sure you save it in your Chapter 9 folder. I'm just going to go ahead and save it as 9.16 and save it. All right. All right. Now that we have what we have here, we're ready to start putting our small details in. and our dimensions. I'm going to go ahead and remove the center line here and the center line here. Now, there's a detail here. You'll notice this in the book, that this should be curved right here. Even though it's not actually a curve in there, there's no fillet on this edge. What we're going to put in is something called a runout. All right, it lets the person who's reading the blueprint to see that this line stops when it hits the circle and becomes part of that object. So I'm going to go ahead and do fillet. Let's try a radius of 0.25. There is no normal actual dimension for this. Oh wait, I need to use radius first. 0.25. Fill it from here to here. Looks a little much. This is more of a visual thing, so it's not an accurate, this has got to be this number. Fill it. Radius 0.125. All right, notice I clicked on this line first and then that line to make sure the state is a solid line here, this little arc. Then I'm going to use the extend command to bring my center line back in. Now, because this is a center line, I want this to come a little bit longer. Since I can't stretch and pull that on any angle that I want, an easy thing to do is to use a offset command. You set any old distance of, let's do 0.25. Selecting this line and going parallel. Then we can use the extend command to make sure that center line is not stopping at the end of the object. We could do the same thing with this circle. Use the offset command, 0.25. Offsetting that circle. And using the extend tool to extend all of our center lines along the circle. We don't have to do this side because it's already going all the way across. I'm going to also offset 0.25 from here out to extend the center line here. Just to notify that's the center of the piece. I'm going to erase that extra line in there. All right, this is looking pretty good. Everything on here is notated that we need. Now we need to start putting in our dimensions. Before we do that, let's go ahead and check our layout. 11 by 17 landscape. Clicking inside the viewport. Let's try a 1:2 scale. That might work for our needs. Let's go ahead and just position this accordingly. So that top view is a little bit too high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into model. And I'm going to select that line or that object and move it down a little bit. So making sure ortho is on, clicking in an empty area and pulling it in just a little bit, leaving some room for dimensions. making sure this is still in line with each other. Back to our landscape, and that's looking pretty good. This view right here, let's pull that in a little bit, just because I think it looks a little bit distant. Now yours may vary, and you might not need to do all these little adjustments, or you may need to do more of these adjustments. But the goal is to make this look nice and clean. This side view should be in line with the front view. The front view should be in line with the top view. And you clearly give yourself enough room for dimensions across the drawing. So now that we know what our drawing scale is at 1 to 2, I can go back to model space, and I can set that to 1 to 2. And I can start going through my dimensions here. Or if I want, I can go to my 11 by 17 landscape, and I can lock. So this lock. When I lock that, I lock the viewport. I can no longer zoom in and out to change the scale of the viewport, so I don't have any accidents by accidentally changing my scale. And while I'm inside the viewport, notice the dark line. I am working in model space through my sheet, looking through the viewport. And I can start putting in my dimensions. Coming across the bottom here. And coming across here. Now, one thing that if you start working in here, to make sure is your layers are correct. I typically like to work within model space because then I can see different layers that I'm working with. Also, I want to make sure that all my line work go through, selecting each and every line that's on layer 0. And changing it to my object layer. So make sure you get all the lines. All right, so I have that all set up. I'm going to change my current working layer to Anno. Now, whether or not you need to see the layers or not, you can also still work within the viewport. Just make sure that the current layer you're working with is your active layer, and everything you draw should come out real nice. But I'm going to work in model space so I can see all my dimensions on my drawing that I have brought in here. You do not have this. You have the handout. However you're using it, make sure you can reference it easily. So either way to do it, through the viewport, which will give you the ability to see where your dimensions have their limits to, or whether you do it in model space to see the colors and the layers. Both methods work. All right, I'm going to start putting in my dimensions. Now, you notice that I use the linear dimension. This is going to be where you're going to be using a lot of align dimensions for anything that's on an angle like that. I don't like how this is covering the center line, so I cannot do that. All right, that's fine. Let's see, let's dimension our circle. Diameter. And then our diameter. Now I don't want to show the center line, so I'm going to select both of these. And go to Properties. And instead of line, I'm going to change that to none. For a little bit of cleanup work, I'm going to put a center mark in the Annotate tab, center mark. I'm going to select that center mark. And I'm going to use the rotate command, rotating it to center to line up with that line there. Then I could grab that extension line here, pull it back in. I'm going to go ahead and erase that center line. Making sure this is on center line. So I have my relationship between the center mark that's here and the center of this piece here. All right, looking good. Let's go ahead and put some more dimensions in. Don't need properties anymore. Close that. The depth of the 3 for that circle. That 1. It's a little funky. Is it okay? Some acceptable parameters. All right. We need our 48 degrees. Let's put in the angular dimension. Got that, got that. Got the distance here. Let's go ahead and put some dimensions here on the front view or on the top view. Either one will work. These are going to be linear dimensions, giving us the overall of the thickness, where the rib starts, and then how thick the rib is. Pull this number out so it's not intersecting with the dimensions in here. Another way it might look a little cleaner. Let's take that out. And let's go from here to here. Putting the dimension on the other side. Pulling it across. Through all our dimensions. I think we've got everything we need. 2 or 4 or 1. Our angle. Distance here. Now I'm noticing that I did not set up my units precision. So I'm going to go ahead and update that. Let's go ahead and do DIM style. I'm going to modify to 2 places. Hit OK. Close. That updates everything up to 2 places. This drawing's looking complete. I don't really think I'm missing anything. So I go through, check everything. I'm going to go ahead and go to landscape, take a look at our drawing, making sure none of the dimensions have gone out of the view of what we're working with. All looks pretty good. Once you're done, click out of that viewport. What you're going to need to do is indicate your scale, your drawn by, your date, and sheet 1 of 1. Remember, you can click on any of these and edit the text. When you're done, click on the gray, get out of it. When you're ready to print, make sure you save, then go to print. Continue the single sheet. And if you use the correct template, your drawing will be this PDF. You'll be in monochrome. Your scale will be all set. And all you have to do is preview, look at your drawing, make sure it has everything you need, all your hard lines, your hidden lines, center lines. And once you're done, you can accept that, exit out of this, and hit OK. Once you hit OK, you'll be prompted to save your PDF. Make sure you save it in your PDF folder for the chapter. And then you can turn it in via Canvas or other further instructions from the teacher at a different time. This has been your 9.16 tutorial, and I'll see you in the classroom. Bye-bye.